All right, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Richard Moore. This is American Investigator. Thank you for joining me today. And in just a second, I'm going to have a conversation. It's a great conversation with a young county board supervisor out of Price County in northern Wisconsin. His name is Jason Hastings. He'll be along just in just a second. We're going to be talking about land use issues and land confiscation issues in northern Wisconsin, but these really affect all across the state. Conservation easements, the stewardship program, carbon credits. We're going to be getting into credits and a lot more issues. A very interesting conversation that everyone needs to hear. I just want to make a couple of quick points before I get to Jason. And the first is I've been writing, those who follow this podcast, follow this Substack. No, I've been talking and writing a lot about the Stewardship Fund, the Assembly, and the bill to extend authorization of that. The program ends June 30th without reauthorization. The Assembly passed a version of the bill to reauthorize it, which would end, for all practical purposes, land acquisition for the 2 years of the extension. That's what needs to happen, unless, of course, we end it altogether, which is even better. So far, the Senate has some bad amendments were put in place in the Senate, but they weren't approved. The stewardship version was pulled from the calendar, and the Senate has not acted. But I would point out that the Senate has not adjourned for the year either, and so there's no telling what might happen until the fat cat Senate sings. Anything can happen. You never know. For them to do something other than what the Assembly passed would require calling the Assembly back into session. But again, you never know. What we hope is to get out of this year with either the Assembly version, which kills land acquisition for all practical purposes, or no version at all and just let stewardship expire, and then come back and rebuild the development portions of stewardship, which takes care of the properties that we already have. Either way, but here's what we need to do. We need to get out of the woods here of this legislative session, and then we need to elect Tom Tiffany governor so that we can deal with these issues with a new executive branch leader and a conservative executive branch leader who understands what's at stake in these property rights battle, because so many on both sides of the aisle don't in the legislature. And then we need to go to work educating everyone, conservatives as included, on the need for not just shutting down stewardship land acquisition because we've got too much land already and proceeding on a case by case basis, but also dealing with another very important issue, and that's conservation easement reform, meaning we need to end these perpetual conservation easements in perpetuity that take land off of the possibility of development forever. And there's also all sorts of ins and outs of this. But the bottom line is, if we're going to have conservation easements, they should be for a specific term. 30 years, that's probably the max. 15 years is better, so that they could then either be renewed by the current property owner at the time or let lapse. After all, conditions change, environmental conditions change. And so a property that needs protecting now might not need protecting 15 or 50 or 100 years down the road. And I would point out that our respect, our system, our belief system in private property rights comes from English common law. And in English common law, you could not rule from the grave. And that's essentially what we do when we allow these conservation easements to exist in perpetuity. The environmentalists will tell you, that, oh, this is the ultimate property right, letting the current landowner decree what is going to happen to the land forever. But that is not. It's the ultimate land confiscation. It takes away the reasonable use of property by future property owners those future owners, future generations. And again, environmental conditions change. It's not sound public policy either. We need to get in that and educate people about the need for this kind of reform. We got too many of these easements in place, and we need not to have any more. But more about that, we'll talk with Jason in just a second. And one final point that I want to make before I bring Jason in is that we have in Jason a young uh, leader who ran for the county board. His wife, Tammy, is also an up and coming conservative leader. She is chairwoman of the Price County GOP, Republican Party. And I want to stress how important it is that we have young people, that the conservative movement pay attention to the grassroots, to the communities out there, and develop young leaders for the future. Young leaders who will go out and run for election to town boards and to county boards, who will lead their parties. Because right now, the left, seeing that it has run into roadblocks in the federal government, that it has been stymied at the state level, have now come in realizing that they don't need a whole lot of votes. They don't really need to command a majority of these local elections to win very important seats on these local boards. And our conservative movement needs to turn our attention to developing candidates who will run for these local seats. These are very, very important seats because they dictate so much of state policy. You know, county government isn't just is an administrative arm of the state, and so much of the policy coming down from the state is enforced on the local level. And so then they take an inch, they take a mile, they come in, they win elections, and we have all sorts of programs and environmental initiatives and tax dollars being spent that really go against what the legislature is saying. All you need to do is take a look at land use comprehensive plans in so much of the state to see that that's the case. And just a number or two here is that last year, 2024, the state of Wisconsin, county governments by themselves, not counting towns or any other taxing entities like schools or technical colleges, county governments collected $2.55 billion in property tax. That's not chump change. So when you think about where your taxes are going, a lot of them are going right to your county governments, and they're being scarfed up if we don't take those seats by leftists who promote programs that shouldn't exist. And we find it all across the state. In Oneida County alone, a county with 36,000 people, maybe 37,000 now, $18 million in property taxes. It goes on down and down the road. So we need to pay attention and develop leaders here like Jason and like his wife and others who are getting involved so we can run for these local offices. I'm going to shut up now and take a quick silent break. I'll be back with Jason Hastings. As promised, the guest today is a guy from northern Wisconsin, right next door to me in Oneida County. They do a little better, I think, on land use issues than we do over in Oneida County, but northern Wisconsin is the hot spot for land confiscation. And my guest is Jason Hastings. I mentioned him before that he would be a guest. He is a business owner in Price County. He is a Oneida County, a Price County supervisor who's been fighting the good fight there. And so we're going to get into the whole. We've been talking about. I write about, and I know everybody almost ad nauseum gets sick of it sometimes, about stewardship, the need for reform. We have too much land, the problem with conservation easements, but sometimes it's good to get a perspective from boots on the ground where it's being happening in the trenches. And Jason is going to give us that perspective today. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Good day, Rich.
Why don't you begin by just giving us a little background about yourself?
Sure.
Then we'll go into the politics of it.
Yeah, it's all tied together. as a young man, I was not really involved in politics. Up until about 4 to 5 years ago, there was a meeting of the Price County supervisors that had to do with carbon credits. Are you familiar with carbon credits, Rich?
Hmm.
They There was a carbon credit meeting. The Price County wanted to get on the carbon registry for 40 years. And this all ties together because this is the same network of companies that is buying up lands. They're not only doing it at a private level, they're doing it at a public level through carbon credits, Rich. It's the same network that has the carbon credits, which will tie up our county forest for 40 years, but it's also private stuff that's going on. The private land trusts are wanting conservation easements as well. So it's a public and private situation. It's a lot bigger than just conservation easements. So I actually have introduced some legislation this morning to the forestry committee this morning that is going to back us out of the carbon credits actually. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we get on top of this before they capture all of our land. At that meeting at the Price County supervisors 4 years ago, the supervisors were not allowed to speak their opinion on this item. And I believe that's
Rise.
I believe that's how it passed, Rich. It was set up, the meeting was set up so that the supervisors would look like they were for this kind of thing. And I think it passed 7-8. So the Price County is on the forest carbon registry for 40 years. And they're promised millions and millions of dollars, and there has been zero payouts on this. And it's been almost 5 years. I think it's time that we hang up our hats on that program. But that's what got me into this. And, it made me curious right away originally that, carbon credits, what in the world? It's kind of a fantasy world, this type of thing. And it's big companies wanting to use our county assets for their private prosperity. And I think it should be illegal, honestly. The taxpayers should not be responsible. I am a private land advocate, but this is crossing lines here when you get people's taxpayer dollars involved into it. So
Right. It's private land confiscation and using taxpayer dollars to do it. And,
right.
so your situation, but to put it in perspective for people in terms of northern Wisconsin. So the Price County deal that you guys have been struggling with, about 2,000 acres, I think, over there in Price County. But the larger project is about 26,000 acres, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, in Sawyer, Price, Bayfield counties. Now, next door, last year, a year before, we had in Oneida County the Pelican River Forest easement, and they tied up 56,000 acres there. And again, using taxpayer dollars, and tied this land up in perpetuity, swallowed one town whole. And so we haven't had the carbon credits come into play on this one yet, although I'm sure it will. But why don't you take us through the exact process of this easement that they were trying to get in Price County, which is part of that larger project, and just how that works with the carbon credit. Like, who owns the land and where do we go from there?
Yeah, these are private land trust companies that own the property, and they want to utilize a fund called the Nelson Stewardship Fund to buy up these conservation easements, and that's here in my tax dollars. The Knowles Nelson Stewardship has got millions of dollars in interest each week, and it's just growing and growing. And Tony Evers wants to take, I think, 100 million at one point was the talking point that he wanted to take that much private land from northern Wisconsin. And these type of deals are not new. They've been going on in Montana and California. The land grabs, their water rights grabs, they're all the same type of thing. That's in Mexico too, these other communist countries, they're following the same plan.
No, they actually are. So as I understand it, over in Price County, that 2,000 acre chunk or whatever it is exactly is owned by a company called Aurora Sustainable. Sounds nice, doesn't it? And what's their what is their gig? What's their story?
Apparently, they're the largest private landowner. They own 1.7 million acres throughout the United States. And like I said, they're partnered with Blue Source, and it's part of their network, the same carbon credit companies. So that was a stepping stone into these conservation easements. That's how it's kind of all tied together, which I wanted to point out. But the conservation easements are something that ties it up forever, which is never something that anybody should do. It's not our land. It's our God-given right to govern this land. So I think it's important that that
Well,
people become aware of this and the reality of what it is.
you know, British common law, the environmentalists will tell you, and they use this line all the time. Well, this is the ultimate property right. I mean, you know, if you could, you, the property owner, are putting this into an easement forever. That's your right. No, it's not. That goes against British common law. It was never considered a property right to rule from the grave forever, because
Yeah,
you take away the property rights of future owners. And as you mentioned too, I mean, not only does a lot of this land not need to be conserved today, right? I mean, the Pelican River over there is land that's very developable, but what if environmental conditions, we talk about climate change. Well, what about if environmental conditions change in 50 years or 100 years and you no longer need to have that land protected, but it's protected in perpetuity? So, yeah, the conservation easements are a big thing. And then you have the carbon credits. And I think over there, you've got a carbon credit. So you got Aurora. And then don't we have, it's a new climate is there, I believe the name of their, that's a carbon credit company. And
yep.
so how do the carbon credits come into play here?
They're sold off to large companies like Disney and the oil refineries that all buy carbon credits. You see the Green for Life dump or garbage trucks driving around with carbon initiatives and how they're cleaning up our environment, but it's not. It's actually making it worse by allowing them to pollute even more. So it's just part of the same scam.
So the land that's available over there, what kind of land is it that they're trying to put into an easement?
It's quality forest land. There's all sorts of trees there. You can do whatever you want with the land. It's high ground. It's not. I don't believe it's only a little bit. It touches the watershed.
So it could be you could use it for some type of development if you wanted
Absolutely.
to. You
Yeah.
could do it for you could log it.
Yep.
Okay. And so I don't know what the was there a particular, usually in these conservation easements, they'll say, okay, conservation is the top priority that we're going to preserve. Over here, they were going to preserve some of the 56,000 acres for logging in particular. Are there subsidiary uses that they promised to preserve in that land?
I'm sure there is. You
Yeah.
know, that's kind of what people want to do with it. I think it's a good idea to conserve it, but conservation doesn't mean what they say it means. So it's you can't go that route. That's
Well,
not
it's also worth pointing out too that this is a new climate. Oh, say so. Aurora Sustainable owns the land. A new climate is the partner that brings the carbon credits into it. They are a subsidiary
yep.
of TP Rising. I may have the name a little bit off, but that company is owned by former Goldman Sachs CEO Hank Paulson, who was also former Secretary Treasury of the country. But their whole big thing now is to sell carbon credits.
Yep.
And Paulson's outfit has two offices, and this just blows my mind, Jason. They got two offices in the world. One's in Chicago. I guess that's puts them quite central to the Midwest and all the timberland and Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. And then the second office they got is in Beijing, China.
Isn't
Now
that amazing?
that should tell you something right there. They advertise themselves as addressing the climate problems that
Right.
China and the rest of the world face. China and the rest of the world. So it shows you where their priorities are, and then and they get the carbon credits, right, Jason? Whether they whether that land is touched or not.
Yeah, from what I understand, with Donald Trump in office right now, the green scam is on hold. So I think I'm pretty sure that's why we haven't got any payments yet, and I don't think we will as long as the Republicans are in charge in Washington. But the concern is that the Biden era policies are still being funded and implemented into our county. Just yesterday, there was a meeting for the Wisconsin Land and Water Executive meeting again on the 26th of February. If you go down to number 8 in the executive director's report, they're partnering with companies like Nestle and Purina. I don't know if you've done any research on that, Rich, but the CEO of Nestle is completely against you and I having control of our water usage. So this isn't just land, it's water usage as well. There's a great big push. There's been millions of dollars of employees being created in the DNR to groom us. I think they're grooming us as a county supervisors because there's never been any agendas sent out. There's never been any state agendas sent out into our county inbox. But they're having the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation is having at least one meeting per week, and I'm able to see their agendas and who's involved. And it's like they're grooming us for this, and we absolutely need to get people on board to stop this movement that's going on. Otherwise, we aren't going to have any land or any future revenue for the county taxes, because that's the main source of income is our property taxes, Rich.
So so go through the land and water conservation. What are they trying to push through exactly? Because that's interesting.
It's a new committee that has been created in the last 3 months or so since the conservation stuff has come across my desk. But there's executive committees and there's tons and tons of agendas that keep coming to my inbox that I'm watching because it's obviously a concern. I don't want to put a quarter in to get a glass of water at my house. I'd like to utilize my water as I please. I believe it's one of our rights as an American to have control of our own water here, especially in northern Wisconsin, where we have crazy aquifers that everybody can tap into.
So is this a situation where we might see, although we have the Trump administration, as you say, putting things on hold, might see grants flowing into try to get local boards to go along with grants for certain projects that end up, in my book, always or usually being land confiscation?
Yes, this is all above Donald Trump. He's only got so much power. These are the globalists. If you look at
Yeah.
the Nestle chairman, he was the chairman for the World Economic Forum there and the board of trustees for a couple of years, I think last year. So these are globalists we're fighting. They aren't just the Democrats in our United States. It's bigger than that, Rich. It's a true thing.
And that's a good point. You mentioned earlier about, well, we do have the Trump administration in power, but there's a lot of Biden policies, there's a lot of Biden bureaucrats and a lot of Biden money still in the pipeline. And you talk about this huge grant economy. I can't go to a committee or board meeting in Oneida County without hearing about, well, we can get this grant and this grant and this grant to do this. And it's totally out of the hand of elected officials, right?
It's probably even above that, Rich. I believe that these globalists even control the grant,
Yeah, yeah.
the grant companies, the grant writers.
And the nonprofits.
Yep.
All absolutely the nonprofits. I made the point, I was talking to somebody, I made the point is like, well, the Trump administration's in power. Well, and I made the point, well, we are not in power. We as conservatives sometimes think we are because Trump won the election. And thank God that he did. I'm not saying it's insignificant, but when you take a look at the media, well, the left still controls most of the media. You take a look at the nonprofits, the left controls that. The left controls a large swath of corporate America.
It's scary. These podcasts are the only people that are telling the truth right now, Rich.
That's right.
What happens with the social media censorship that happens when the Democrats become in power? Nobody's going to know what's going on. I really appreciate what you're doing with your life and devoting it to the truth.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the work that you're doing there. And but let's talk about local. We talk about, okay, so they figured out now that particularly in red states, they can't go through the state, and that they figured out that they can go to local county boards and they can go to local town boards and they can get their way on a lot of it, and a lot of times they do. The county boards. What is your sense of that? Why do county boards, local boards go so much along with this stuff? Or do they not just have a clue, or are they in on the gig? I don't know.
That's a very powerful question, Rich. I'm in sales as a concrete salesman. I have to sell concrete. My wife has been in sales for the newspaper and radio her whole year. And in the sales profession, there's somebody that works between the seller and the buyer, and that person usually works on behalf of the salesman. That person that you call the gatekeeper. They create the distance between the salesman and the buyer. You understand?
Yeah.
So there is an unelected official in most of our counties that is the person, the gatekeeper, to implement these policies into the counties. And those ideas come from these conventions in Madison where they all gather and they go over this stuff. And these are all decisions that are made in a back room. It's not us supervisors that are making these policy decisions. These schemes are predatory and they are being implemented by the unelected officials,
Mm-hmm.
which is taxation without representation. There's so many issues with these types of deals that go on, Rich. With the carbon credit money, we were supposed to be promised of millions of dollars in Price County. Price County even took and wrote a resolution that says, now therefore be resolved that the Price County Board of Supervisors authorizes an appropriation of to $650,000 of qualified ARPA funds to be used for the expansion of the Solberg Lake County Park, with such funds to be repaid with the carbon credit revenues when they do become available. So this dirty money not only is corrupt, it breeds more dirty money and creates more dirty policies, and they're being implemented in closed doors, and the supervisors don't have a say in it. It's tyranny what's going on, Rich.
Yeah, and they don't give them a lot of the information that they need to make a good decision, do they?
Right. No, and our money's just going bye-bye, and there's no minutes. There's no agenda that says we're going to take and double the size of that Solver Lake project. It's just amazing how dirty politics breeds dirty politics, and it's a never-ending spiral.
What happened to that resolution that you were just talking about? Where's that whole situation in your county now?
It's attached to the carbon credit resolution I just introduced this morning, because that's the main issue, is that there was a promise here to repay that money, and it's not there. They're spending money with surety that it's going to cover it when it comes in, but it's not coming. So they're creating projects and spending taxpayer dollars where they should be saving it to redo roads and stuff.
And is the easement issue dead?
Yes, it is dead in Price County and smack in the middle of the state of Wisconsin. The Nature Conservancy Center guy came up and shook my hand afterwards and said, I want to personally congratulate you for shutting this project down here in Price County. And I had to shut it down to 2 committees, actually, because it went through the forestry committee first.
Yeah.
And that decision to table it was not good enough. They trumped the forestry committee with the land conservation committee, and that ended up shutting it down too. So it's just unethical at every single which way you look at it.
Well, now you said something that's curious to me. Why did the Nature Conservancy of all people want this shut down?
No, he just congratulated me for shutting it down. He was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No,
now it makes sense.
They're the ones that are spearheading all this. They have history of taking and these land trust companies. If you do a little research, they'll take and buy these easements from the land trust companies, and then they'll take and sell them right back to the Bureau of Land Management, which is the federal. So they have a history of taking the private property and directly reselling it for a profit to the feds.
Amazing. It's just amazing. I think everybody should understand here. when it comes back, you're talking about land and water conservation and all the stuff they're up to. You're talking about these easements, the carbon credits, that land confiscation. Everything comes down to control of the land. And when you've got 1 out of every 6 acres in this state is controlled by some entity of government, whether it's the federal, state, or local. So you've got already, if you control the land, you control the people.
Yeah.
And it becomes a huge thing. There's a case, and I am writing about this, but there's a case, and it's a quirky thing the way they work. In Wisconsin, there's an old Supreme Court case that if you walk the beach, say Lake Michigan or a lake, you can, if you step out of the water, but you're below the ordinary high water mark, the state owns the land up to the ordinary high water mark. But if you have dry land between the water and the ordinary high water mark, a 1923 court decision said you're trespassing, even though the state owns the land, because you got riparian rights and the riparian owner owns that. So this guy goes and he tests this down in Shorewood, and he got found guilty of trespassing, as the municipal judge would. But now he's teamed up with Midwest Environmental Advocates, this huge environmental group that focuses on all sorts of nonsense in the Midwest. And they're challenging this, and the way they're challenging this, and I don't have a dog in the hunt on whether somebody should be able to walk below the ordinary high water mark or not. I mean, it's stained old land, pick your poison. But they're not, they don't care about that. They want to use this to expand the public trust doctrine, and under the heading of natural scenic beauty. So what this guy was arguing, like, yeah, we had this old court case, but natural scenic beauty, my right to natural scenic beauty, gave me the right to walk at the beach because I can enjoy the beauty. Now that opens a big door, because once it gets to the Supreme Court where they want to get it, and that's a bunch of Looney Tunes, if ever there was a basket of Looney Tunes, the majority, they're going to argue that because he has the right. And then the Supreme Court could take this broad thing and say, well, natural scenic beauty gives you the right to access dry land. It takes the public trust doctrine off the water onto land, and it could take it above the ordinary high water mark. A lake cottage could be an eyesore, violates natural scenic beauty, and the DNR has already argued that for years. So they do all of these different ways. They want to come at you and take our land, and it's not about the environment, it's about control, right?
Absolutely. One thing we're going to want to watch is in Health and Human Services. A few meetings ago, they were talking about PFAS,
Yeah.
fluorocarbons or whatever, getting into our water. So it's a real thing, I guess. But it's once the government starts getting involved in our water, Rich, we're going to want to follow it. You're going to want to be concerned about what's going on there. But yeah, the morals of people like the Nature Conservancy Center and the Sierra Club. David Brower of the Sierra Club said, childbearing should be a punishable crime against society unless the parents hold a government license. These are statements you can read them for yourself. That's the moral, that's the mind frame of these people that are writing these policies, Rich. It's not about conservation. It's about power and control.
Yeah, and I mentioned one of the institutions that they control still, I left out, but one of the most powerful institutions, most influential institutions, are our public schools.
Absolutely.
And as long as they have an effective monopoly on public schools and we don't have school choice, then boy, unless you homeschool or get your kids out of there somehow, and that's why I don't know how you see this, but I see this as like, they're just waiting until they we think DEI is gone. DEI is not gone.
Nope.
They're still shoveling that crap in the schoolroom.
I sent you that message last week. They're even using a Black climate justice environmental grants or something that they're trying to push. So they're using DEI, the weapon of DEI, against the Americans with this conservation movement as well. It's absolutely not dead, and the senators and congressmen need to know that.
They do, and the pressure needs to be uh, the pressure needs to be applied. I don't know when your county board elections are up, or do you have county board
April, that's
this
a good
April?
time to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because do you have any good people, good lineup running in your county?
There's two contested positions. We didn't even have a primary because nobody in Price County has any desire to run for these positions. I spent my you have to get 20 signatures when you run for a county board supervisor. I spent my entire time in the town of Fifield going from door to door, knocking, getting signatures, and people didn't have a clue what a county supervisor was. They didn't have a clue what they did. There's people that shut the door that say they didn't vote. There's a real concern. I think we need to get our young school kids involved somehow. We got to create a government day for children or something. Bring them into the county room to bring them in and see how this operates and how it works.
We do, because it's a very, very serious thing. The same situation plays out in county after county, and we've got it in Oneida County right now. You're right. The spring elections are April.
Yep.
I think we have out of 21, we've got a county board of 21.
Wow.
And out of 21, there are 3 contested seats.
Wow.
It's hard to get people. We had a couple of vacancies. One guy died in office, and they appointed his son. We had another one where they had to who resigned, and then they had to beg people to take it. And I think that really, you're right. You're right. There are very few people vote, and what people they don't even know what a county supervisor is. It's a spring election, so it's an off-year election, and people do not realize how important these county board seats are. You on the county board, you control a lot of tax dollars. Your county board does. I mean, we pay a lot of, you spend a lot of tax dollars, but it's even worse than that or it's even more important than that because you guys are dealing with all these land use issues and conservation, all that stuff.
Yep. 31 million is what 2025 was for Price County. That was our expenditures. That's a huge chunk of money that we oversee. 10 years ago it was 10 million. Now it's 34 million, 31 million.
And that doesn't even count. Like we're talking about grant dollars. You guys are, you oversee the grant programs, you approve the grant programs, all that money flows into these huge budgets. And, and then you add, we don't even have time to get into it today, but then you add organizations like the Wisconsin Counties Association.
That's one thing I wanted to touch on, Rich, real quick is our
go ahead.
One of our NGOs, a non-governmental organization called Northwest Regional Planning, is the one that implements this kind of stuff. And that was one of their tactics that they used against us in the meeting. They were so proud to say that these conservation easements are written into our comprehensive plans, Rich, and we didn't even know about it. I got it right here. You'd have to read it backwards, but it's Northwest Regional Planning's outdoor rec study, and it's sustainable outdoor recreation planning, the partnerships and funding. They even want to monitor and evaluate, and the promotion of local and sustainable products and climate adaptation strategies and all sorts of stuff like that. Just last week at the county, we signed a resolution urging the governor and the state legislature to enact a sustainable transportation funding solution you're going to want to follow. There's all sorts of different user fees that they're redrawing the entire DOT system, and this is all through Northwest Regional Planning as well, and that includes illegal aliens, by the way, in the user fees and that. And here's another one for the city of Park Falls, Resolution 26-001. It's a policy to prohibit the use of excessive force, physically barring entrances and exits for non-violent civil rights demonstrations. These are the
holy moly.
They're the kind of policies that Northwest Regional Planning is implementing, Rich. And if you go to do an open records request, because I personally have into these kind of entities, you can't get an open records request. Yet we pay them $15,000 or $20,000 a year to do the different policies that are written into the comprehensive plan and advocate for economic development and conservation and all the different types of conservation and shoreline protection I don't even know all of it yet. I'm still learning. So
It does. And we've got the North Central Regional Planning Commission out of Wausau over here, but they do the same thing. And again, this is unelected people.
Yep.
And and the whole idea of regional government anyway, I mean, is just
Yep.
abominable. I mean, so we're going to turn it all over to unelected officials on a regional, not a local level, and we're going to make decisions for your community, your life, and too often they get away with it.
Yep, we just renewed our administrator's contract for another 5 years. At the end of his contract, he'll be making as much as a congressman. And Price County's got 14,000 people, Rich. And if you Google how many people is suggested for a county administrator, it's 50,000. So there's a lot of money being spent in places where we could be reallocating it. So there's a lot of considerations in the future that we need to take into consideration here, and the different ways we can save money and redistribute funds instead of doing these pet projects like this.
So where do we go from here, Jason? I mean, we see you and I we're talking about here. A lot of this stuff is being implemented on the local level. I mean, sure, we need Tom in the governor's mansion. We need to get rid of. We need to hold the Senate and the Assembly. Those are important things, but all too often the bureaucracy runs everything anyway. Even on the state level, even on the federal level. I mean, Trump leads the elected portion of the executive branch, not the bureaucratic portion.
Right.
And he does a great job trying to disrupt the narrative there, but it's a struggle. But you get down now to what we've been talking about today, and I think what has become very clear here is a lot of this damage, a lot of this agenda is being pushed on the local level, right? On your level.
Yeah, in the last 4 years, you can see it's kind of a power shift. There's been 3 or 4 resolutions that we've sent forth urging the Governor Evers to do something, So they're taking all those resolutions and bringing them probably into their public hearings and saying, look at all the support we have for this, because they're able to see that most counties in northern Wisconsin are liberal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to the conservation easement stuff.
Yeah.
Our county register of deeds is the single most important tool of freedom that we have. It is where us Americans can prove ownership of property, and it's a tool to obtain loans. And it's something a deep thought to think about. If we keep taking land off of our tax rolls, Rich, there's no future for us.
No.
We can't just keep doing it. At what point do they want to stop? How much conservation is enough?
Well, that's the great. How much of Price County is publicly owned?
I'm not sure. I wish I knew. I think it's close to 56% or something like that.
Yeah, well, you're one of the ones with big chunks. I know that you come east to here to Oneida County. We've got 38% is publicly owned. You go next door, then to the other side to Forest County, and I think they're like maybe 60% owned, but it's well over 50%. You cut out any kind of prospect for economic development, any kind of hope for the future of the Northwoods, of northern Wisconsin. What they want, and I guess that's the goal. They want to herd everybody into the cities and take everybody out of northern Wisconsin.
There's so many spider webs we could follow at this, but yes, it's an absolute attack on free enterprise in our communities as well. And yes,
it boggles my mind. And yet, one of the things I got a little story here, but one of the things they do want to preserve when they run us all out of here and shut down every small business and put us in a 15-minute city. Once they do that, you can guarantee there will still be lake houses because the elites in Madison will have their lake homes, and they will be the ones. They will be the only ones allowed. They're, like you said, gatekeepers. They will be the guardians of the Northwoods, the guardians of the pristine properties. I have a little story here because it's just.
No, you're right.
It just boggles my mind. So this has been 20 years ago. There was about 20 years ago. There was there was a big push by the DNR. Their strategy at the time, they're always trying to figure out how to steal private land. So there was a big push to convert lake bed wetlands, which are privately owned,
Yep.
to lake beds, which are publicly owned. So they came up with all newfangled ways to determine the ordinary high water mark.
Oh yeah.
So there was a guy, and it was scientific mumbo jumbo. And so there was but they were brazen about it. There was a guy in Minocqua, so he had a house, and before he bought his house, it was very close to a wetland. So he goes out and he asked the DNR, he goes to zoning, and they said, well, you got to go to DNR, figure out if that's wetland or lake bed. Big difference, because you'll be non-conforming. And of course, the purpose of the state, which it still is, although they won't admit it, is to get rid of every non-conforming house there is. So he goes, and this was the old style DNR guy. They used to be halfway decent. He comes out there and he said, "Oh, that's wetland. That's obviously wetland." And the guy says, "Well, I don't trust you. You're DNR. So will you give me a letter?" So yeah, I'll give you a letter. So he gave him a letter. And so then maybe 5 years goes by. This guy retires, and he wants to then do a mother-in-law cottage out back. Same situation, same dimensions. So he goes to get his permit, and they say, "Well, you better go talk to the DNR." And so they go, so they tell him to go talk to the. He said, "Well, I don't need to talk to the DNR. I got a letter." And they said, "Well, you better go talk to the DNR." So he goes. Now another DNR agent comes out, new style, younger, and she takes one look at it, and she said, this is all non-conforming, and you can't build there, by the way, your mother-in-law cottage, and your house needs to go because it's all lake bed." He said, "No, no, 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 no. It's not lake bed. I got a letter from you guys saying it's wetland." She said, "That letter is not worth the paper it is written on. And if I'm going to declare it lake bed," and he did challenge them. The problem was, in those days, Scott Walker and company changed it. You had to go to court in Madison. So you were going to lose, and he couldn't afford to take it. And then and in that same department, this guy had a lake house. Talk about the elites. So he had a lake house, and he wanted to put a deck to the lakeside. And the Oneida County zoning department said, "You can't do that because you're within the setback." And then he brings out his own subordinate that he supervised from the DNR. She had to put on waiters, the same woman, by the way, in this other situation. And she had to go out into the water and say, "Here's the ordinary high water mark. You can build your deck." This is what you put up. It's corruption, as you mentioned way before. It's corruption. They want to take away property, and they want to invest themselves with their privileged elite. And how do we go about building this on the grassroots? How do we get people involved?
Well, that's a really good question. Is just to get involved even at a local level. The people they don't understand the power that a county supervisor has.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely imperative. But there is a lot of things that can be altered, a lot of things we can eliminate, contracts. There's a comprehensive international performance standards that are all underwritten in the globalist agendas that are, there's language out there that you can follow and trace back in these different policies and the planning that we can eliminate. And I think that's where we need to start. I believe Oneida County did eliminate Northwest Regional Planning from their
we did. Yeah, it was North Central Regional Planning. Yeah, I think they did.
That's one of the things we can do, but we just need to make people aware of what's going on, and that's exactly what we're doing right now.
And I think building and it's sort of one thing at a time, because you do have so few people vote in these county board elections. It doesn't take a whole lot to get on the county board, but people do need to see that it makes a difference. It's not inconsequential, the work that you do and people like you do.
Right. Exactly.
So any other specific issues right now? This has been a great talk. I want you to come back on too before too long.
Sure.
And, continue this dialogue, because I think it's really important that we get people involved and active.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely, Rich. It's socialism at its finest, and the people are voting for it because I believe in the last 30 years that we've been taught in the public school systems that socialism is the economic policy, the way that we operate nowadays. And you know, I
Yeah.
don't say it's true, but it's we're not being taught the other side of what is good and moral. So there's a lot of steps that need to be taken, and you cover a lot of it on your articles. I would definitely suggest Rich Moore on the McClaver institution, and you read his articles, and he's spot on with all of his stuff. So
No, I appreciate it. Well, Jason, it's been a great talk. Let's hold on. I'll get with you right after we go to the break, but
sure.
please come back soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll be back in just a second.